Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about rows and why I consider rows to be the best movement for overall back development, that they're actually a variety of movements, and kind of specifically why I say that, because obviously I love deadlifts and I think deadlifts contribute considerably. They contribute considerably. I used to love pull ups, but I personally found them to cause lots of overuse injuries over time. I got very, very good at them. And at one time, you guys have seen me do a set of 22 reps while weighing over 200 pounds on a wide grip pull up. So I used to be a big fan. I'm not so much anymore. And I used to like them kind of for strength standard purposes as a body fat check. But to me, realistically, they're not worth it. If we want to have a body fat check, how about we just don't be fat, right? There's our simple solution. And the funny thing was, I found exceptions to that rule I used to give with it. Like I knew guys who could do 100-pound weighted pull ups who were, 25% body fat, and who could squat 500 pounds. So, even then, if you just get strong enough, it doesn't really work for that purpose. So, let's talk a little bit about rowing, though. I'm going to be doing a few types of rows in the background. These are just from the last week of training that I did personally before I made this video. So, it was easy to just grab those clips. But you guys will see me doing a standard barbell row, which means it's off the floor. A lot of people call a barbell row a Pendlay row today due to Glenn Pendlay. But Penley just calls it a barbell row, and there is many people have pointed out that is a traditional barbell row. All right, that's a traditional barbell row. The bodybuilder row is the bent over row, where people are standing up in the air, and it actually de-emphasizes the lats quite a bit. It's actually the worst type of row in general for your lats themselves. Much better for your traps. But with these rows, that's the thing we'll notice. I've got dumbbell rows in here also. You've got inverted rows, which are a bodyweight movement. And I actually like inverted rows a lot. Sometimes it's a secondary movement. Now, you can put a weight vest on, you can put chains on with them, things like that. And try to put a plate on. I've not had a lot of luck with keeping plates in place. But these are all good variations. I like sometimes Meadows rows, prescribe those to clients. I like machine rows in some cases, but what are we looking for with these different movements? And the same thing, we can do a lot of them with specialty bars. I've done a lot of seal rows in the past too, but you got to have a certain setup for that to really make it convenient. But dumbbell rows tend to be kind of my favorite these days, right? One arm dumbbell rows. But what are we looking at with a lot of these? It's the fact that it's a balanced back movement. Of course, you work low back and posterior chain isometrically if you're standing, with no support of any type. So that's one of the things we look at with the different variations. All rows work the grip, forearms, biceps, brachialis, radial brachialis. They all work the posterior head of the deltoid, the entire trapezius, rhomboids, lats. They all work all of these things. It's just part of what they do. It's what they do. And they even work biceps. And if you're doing enough rowing, it can handle your bicep development, for pretty much anyone other than a competitive bodybuilder. But keeping in mind, it's easy to overwork biceps, right? They're actually a muscle that's overworked easily. They have one of the lowest volume growth thresholds of any muscle in the body. So, people pay way too much attention to them. And, too much use of them tends to cause overuse of the tendons. Curls are notorious for causing bicep tears. Everyone thinks of deadlifts there, but orthopedic surgeons who have to repair this stuff, they'll tell you they see 10 or 20 ruptures from biceps that have to be surgically repaired for every one they do from deadlifts. So let's be honest about what the real culprit is. It's curls. But when we're looking at these different rows, that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of where do we want to put our emphasis. The more upright you are, the less lat and the more upper back it tends to work. And I don't mean necessarily the rear delts, because rear delts are going to get worked on all rows really effectively. I'm not sure that it matters a lot as far as back angle, but trapezius, right? The more upright you go, the more of your trapezius you use, the more dominant it becomes. Now, that being said, you can still pretty much maximize trap growth with more horizontal rowing instead of vertical. You can absolutely do that, but it just takes more volume to get you there. And you consider some of the shoulder exercises you're probably doing on top of it, you should be covered. As far as when we go more horizontal, meaning less upright, we're more bent over, the more that we do that, the more lat we work, the more latissimus dorsi. Okay, so there's where your differences are. The same thing when we start taking the grip wider versus closer. The wider the grip, the more that emphasis shifts towards rear delts. Right? The wider the grip, the more rear delts work. Possibly in some cases a little less lat, but it tends to do that. So if you want to really develop your posterior head of your deltoids, a little bit wider grip is the way to go. And I'm not saying that it's the only thing any of us should ever do for rear delts. Right? They tend to historically be a very underdeveloped muscle, right? Because they tend to be a go muscle, not a show muscle, and create imbalances. We could argue whether those imbalances put us at risk of injury. Some people feel they do, some people feel that they don't. But I don't think that there's tremendous evidence either way, other than anecdote and just thinking stuff through. I don't think there's real scientific data on it, since we do know that most injuries are caused from overuse. They tend to be caused from overuse, but having a bigger rear delt is never a bad thing. So, so doing a little bit of extra rear delt work in there, it may not necessarily be a bad thing depending on how much rowing you're actually doing. Right? Not necessarily a bad thing. But the same thing when we start looking at the grips, right? We start looking at grips. The more neutral your grip, the more your biceps going to get worked. And I don't want to say, more radial brachialis or any of that, because that seems to be worked very, very effectively with a full pronated grip, right? Works it very effectively. But if you want to make sure you're getting a little more bicep development, going to a neutral grip isn't a bad idea for some of your rowing, whether it's with specialty bars, machines, dumbbells. Dumbbells are going to tend to be more neutral by default. What I don't recommend is supine stuff on rowing, because again, the propensity to rupture biceps, right? It's very, very high on those, and it's simply not worth it. So that's something I don't recommend. But overall, you guys can tell if you're willing to rotate through a couple different movements, almost pretty much all of your back development can be handled by rows and row variations. And to a large extent, your forearms, your grip, your biceps can as well. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.